The sound of shattering glass was alien in a building like a theory in a place of polished silence. $1 billion boardrooms. It came from far above, echoing like a crack in heaven itself. Graham Hollis paused mid-sweep, the mop sturdy, water dripping silently onto the pristine floor. Everything stilled the faint hum of servers, the pulse of flickering lights, even his own breath. The building had exhaled in pain. Then, the freight elevator groaned open behind him. He turned, expecting a misplaced package, maybe another night shift janitor. What met his eyes instead made him forget how to blink. A woman stumbled out, barefoot, bloodied, unraveling. No, not just a woman, the woman, Savannah Renard, billionaire CEO, graced a dozen business magazine covers a year, untouchable, fearsome. Now she looked like she'd fought a war and lost everything but breath. One-sided. Her blouse was soap crimson. Her corporate blazer hung off her like it had been clawed away. Her fingers clutched something wrapped tightly in a scarf. And her face, once carved from ice and ambition, was now wild, broken, terrified. She didn't speak. Neither did Graham. He simply held the door open. She entered wordlessly, leaning against the metal wall of the elevator like a hunted animal that had made it to the last dark corner of the forest. The door slid shut, cutting off the world. Somewhere between the 28th and the basement, her knees buckled. Graham caught her. "Don't," she croaked, voice a gravel whisper. "Don't help me. You don't know who I am." He steadied her anyway. "I know enough," he muttered. "You're bleeding through a $2,000 blouse and hiding in a janitor elevator that narrows it down." Her lips twitched in a humorless laugh, like a blade catching light. "You think this is funny?" "No," he said, easing her onto an overturned bucket. "But if I don't joke, I might start screaming. And my daughter's asleep 2 miles from here." That gave her pause. When the elevator reached the basement, it hissed like something tired of holding secrets. No alarms, no guards, just a blinking fluorescent light trying to decide whether it wanted to live. "You should leave me," she said again, clutching the scarf-wrapped object. "They'll be looking. I just need it out. And this," Graham said, gesturing around, "was your best escape plan, the janitor's shaft." "I built this place," she replied, jaw clenched. "I know where it leaks." He didn't ask more, just pointed to a nearby staff exit that leads to 87th. "Half the cameras don't work. You'll vanish easy." She didn't move. "You want me to carry you?" he asked. "I want you to stop being decent," she snapped. "It's confusing." He shrugged. "I'm not decent, just exhausted. And I don't like seeing people crawl when they used to fly." That stopped her. A flicker passed through her expression like someone catching the scent of a memory they tried to bury. "You were in aerospace," she said slowly. He blinked. "What?" "I read your file." Before the layoffs, her voice steadied. "Graham Hollis, systems engineer, whistleblower on the Horizon project, blacklisted. You ended up here." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown it. "So you do know who I am," he finally said. "I know you believed in something," she replied. "And I can't remember the last time I met someone who didn't have a price." He opened the side door. "Come on," he said, "before you pass out and I have to explain you to my kid." Later, in Graham's small house near the railway line, the living room smelled faintly of old lavender and lived in warmth. Books leaned together like tired friends. A watercolor moon taped to the wall read, "The moon from here." Marley, age 6, Savannah sat stiffly on the worn couch, cradling a mug of tea she hadn't touched. The object she had carried all this way still lay wrapped in her lap. From down the hall came a soft voice. "Daddy." Graham stood, back to bed, but she appeared anyway. Marley, all tangled hair and oversized pajamas, gripping a sketch pad like it was armor. Her eyes landed on Savannah. "Is she bad?" she asked. Savannah inhaled sharply. "No," Graham said gently. "She's just lost." Molly stepped closer, holding up her drawing. A dog with wings soared through stars. Beside it, a woman also flew, her wings bigger than fear. "I gave her wings," Marley whispered, "in case she's scared. Savannah blinked hard. Her hand trembled on the cup. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marley." "That's beautiful," Savannah said. Marley shrugged. "I like drawing people better than naming them." She turned to her dad. "I'm hungry. It's past midnight." Graham sighed, lifting her. "You'll turn into a raccoon." Savannah watched them disappear down the hallway, her heart tightening with something unfamiliar longing, maybe, or the ache of possibility. The scarf had loosened. The object inside peeked out. A hard drive. Scratched, worn, labeled in faded marker. Truth. Moments later, Marley returned with another drawing. "This is you," she said shyly. Offering the paper, Savannah saw herself on a bench next to a man with tired eyes. A little girl between them, all three looking up at the stars. "Do you want to keep it?" Marley asked. Savannah didn't trust her voice. She nodded. Then Marley pointed to something on the floor. "Daddy," she said, holding up a plastic badge. This was in her pocket. Graham took it. His face hardened. It was Savannah Renard's corporate access ID. Across the back in bold black font. "Do not exit after board meeting." Silence. Then the sound. Gravel. Crunching. Footsteps. Slow. Precise. The kind that knew exactly where they were going and why. Graham's instincts lit up. He moved quietly, switching off the hall light with one hand, gesturing Marley back with the other. Savannah's hand closed around the drive. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Back door's got a bolt, but the front, I know how to disappear," she said, her voice low and steady. He turned to her, reading something in her eyes. "Do you?" She didn't answer, just slipped off her shoes, handed back the untouched mug, and moved like someone trained for flight, not escape, but tactical retreat. 3 soft taps at the front door. Not a knock. A pattern. "Mayo," called a voice. "Calm. To calm." Graham peered through the slit in the curtain. A man in a charcoal coat, black gloves, not holding food. A second figure loomed near the fence, scanning rooftops. Graham backed away. "I've got Marley," he said. "You've got 30 seconds. Bathroom window. Slide the trash can. Jump soft." Savannah hesitated. "I didn't mean to bring this to you. It always follows," he said. "Truth's like smoke. Finds every crack." She held his gaze for a moment, then vanished down the hallway. Seconds later, the quiet slide of a window, the rustle of night swallowing a secret. Graham entered Marley's room. She was curled beneath a blanket. "Are they here for her?" "Probably. Is she bad?" "No," he whispered, brushing her curls aside. "Just someone who stopped, lying to others and to herself." "That's scary," Marley said. "The bravest things usually are." The doorbell rang again, but the gravel had stopped crunching. By morning, the house smelled of coffee and dust and something tender, unspoken. Savannah sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in an old flannel that once belonged to Graham's wife. "I landed wrong," she muttered. "Twisted my ankle. You're bleeding into my blanket," he replied dryly. She looked offended and grateful. Neither of them spoke for a while. Marley was still dreaming. The world was hushed. "Why here?" he finally asked. "Of all places," Savannah stared into her untouched tea. "Because I remembered the only time someone looked me in the eye and didn't want anything in return." He chuckled. "That's a low bar, but you didn't flinch," she said. "When I bled the truth." "You didn't tell the truth," he said. "You bled it." She smiled faintly. "Fair. What's on the drive?" he asked. "A blueprint for war," she replied. "Data leaks, memos, proof that Ethereum manipulates predictive data, sabotages competitors, redirects political funds. The centers disappear, and I was their compass," she said softly, "until I realized they'd magnetized the needle. That's poetic. I used to want to be a writer," she said, almost wistfully. "My mother was one. My wife was a pilot," he murmured. "She used to say the sky was just another classroom." "Is that how you ended up here?" They grounded her. Budget cuts. Then came lawsuits. Then the pills. She bowed her head. "I'm sorry. You didn't start the storm," he said. but now you're in it. She looked at him. I can't undo what I built. No, he said, but you can choose what grows in its ashes. She reached into her coat, placed the drive between them. I want to release it, not to the media, not the feds. Then who? Someone who still tells the truth and isn't owned by it. He stared at the drive, then at her. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the last clean name on your list. You're not, she said, just the first one I still trust. From down the hall, Marley's voice rang out. Daddy, the lady. Did she fly yet? Savannah blinked. Graham smiled. Not yet, Bug, but I think she's almost ready. The truth, wrapped in blood and faith, had found a home for now. She's always this quiet in the morning, Savannah asked. Her voice still hushed from the night's silence. She nodded faintly toward the hallway, where the soft hum of crayons and imagination whispered through the walls. Graham poured coffee into mismatched mugs, the aroma settling like warmth into the bones of the small kitchen. Only when she's drawing, he said gently. That's when the world disappears for her. Savannah smiled, just a twitch of her lips, something fragile and half-formed. Must be nice, she murmured. Graham didn't respond with words. He handed her the steaming mug and walked past, the silence between them not awkward, but eased like an old friend who no longer needed introductions. 10 minutes later, Marley appeared, soft-footed and sleepy-eyed, her curls tangled in the night's leftover dreams. In her hand she held a folded paper, like it was spun from porcelain threads. I drew you again, she said to Savannah, voice bright and tender. But this time, I gave you wings. Savannah blinked. Breath caught somewhere between wonder and ache. Why? Because yesterday, Marley said, you looked like someone who forgot how to fly. Graham stilled in the doorway, his back turned, spine straight as if absorbing the weight of his daughter's truth. Savannah lowered herself to one knee. You think wings fix that? Marley tilted her head, completely serious. No, but they remind people that they can. Savannah swallowed hard, her throat thick with words unspoken. She took the drawing gently, like it might burn her fingers or heal them. A sketchy version of herself stood tall on a rooftop, arms wide, wings uneven, but determined. Above her stretched a sky full of crooked stars. I used to think flying meant leaving everything behind, she whispered. Maybe, Marley replied. It just means seeing everything from higher up. Graham coughed loud and deliberate. All right, philosopher, he called. Coat on. Bus'll be here in 15, as Marley skipped off. Savannah turned to him, voice softer than it had been since she arrived. She's not like most kids. She's not like most anyone, Graham said. Lost her mom to a system that never said sorry. Gained an artist with a telescope for a heart. He took a long sip of coffee, meeting Savannah's gaze over the rim. You know, he added, most people on the run don't spend their first night making grilled cheese and listening to cassette tapes. Savannah shrugged. Most people aren't hunted by men they once called sir. That landed heavier than either expected. You could have kept running, he said. I did. For 3 years. New cities, new names, half-truths for people who deserved full ones. But it never felt like disappearing, just slow-motion drowning. She looked up. Now I want to breathe even if it burns. He nodded slowly. Then let's start small. By noon, Savannah was on the porch, cross-legged in the sunlight, sanding the broken frame of an old wooden bench, the one Marley had fallen off trying to catch fireflies years ago. It hadn't held weight since. This wasn't in the witness protection brochure, she said, wiping sweat from her brow. Graham chuckled from the step beside her. Therapy comes in all forms, and it's not about the bench. It's about fixing something no one else thought was worth fixing. She glanced sideways at him. You always talk like that. Only when someone's listening. She hesitated. Then so quietly it could have been the wind asked, what if I break it worse? Then you learn and try again. She looked down at her hands. They were calloused in all the wrong ways, used to building things that eventually hurt people. It's been a long time since I made anything that didn't ruin someone. He met her eyes. Then maybe it's time to build something that saves someone. That night, after Marley had gone to bed and the porch light hummed softly in a halo of moss, Savannah stood beside the old radio console Graham had rescued from a junk heap. Her fingertips traced the worn brass dials, edges smoothed by time, not design. He entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You still thinking about what to do with the drive?" She didn't look at him. "I'm thinking about what happens after." He sat opposite her, the hum of the night settling between them like a secret. No headlines, no press. "But I still want the truth out there." "Then do it your way," he said. "Quiet, clean, real. And if it backfires, at least it's your fire, not theirs." She took a sip, then scanned the small room, its walls lined with stories that didn't need telling. "You ever wonder," she asked, "what your life would have looked like if no one tried to rewrite your ending?" He didn't flinch. Double quotes. "No, I'm too busy writing my daughter's first chapter." She smiled. "That belongs on a billboard." He laughed. "I work better in small print." They fell into silence again, not empty, but full. Then, unexpectedly, Savannah said, "The last time I told the truth, they called it insubordination, then delusion, then they stopped calling." Graham leaned in. "They can hold their breath, but they can't stop truth from breathing." She looked down, eyes clouded. Then slowly, she slid the hard drive toward him. "I want you to be the one who says it." He looked at the drive, then back at her. "I clean floors, Savannah." "I'm out of voice." She smiled faintly. "Exactly. That's why they won't see it coming. Later." The kitchen was alive with scent, garlic, and thyme curling through the air like unspoken hope. Savannah stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, apron dusted with flour, a look on her face like maybe she'd done this 1,000 times in another life. "Should I chop these smaller?" she asked, holding up a cutting board full of carrots. Graham leaned on the doorframe, watching her like a man who couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You're asking the guy who burns toast if the carrots are too big." She smirked and said, "Nothing." Her hands returned to their quiet rhythm. From the living room came Marley's voice through the cracked door. "I need a quiet minute. I'm writing something important." Savannah paused. "She's writing." Graham nodded. "Poem. Showcase at school. Wouldn't even let me peek." "She's got fire," Savannah said, stirring the pot, like she sees the world in sharper colors. "She gets that from her mom." There was again that soft weight in Graham's voice whenever Ellen came up. Not bitterness, not grief, just something unfinished. "You miss her every day," Savannah said. He didn't deny it. "But Marley doesn't need a man drowning in memories. She needs one who can build something from them." Savannah lowered the flame. "You're a better man than people know, and you're not the villain you think you are," he replied. She blinked. "Don't look so shocked. You walked in here running, but you stayed choosing." Dinner was served on mismatched plates. Marley insisted on lighting the chipped candle holder. "Real dinners need real light," she said solemnly. For a while, there was only the soft clink of silverware, laughter about rocket-powered broccoli, and the safe, sacred silence of a home being reassembled. Then Marley stood suddenly. "I brought something." She pulled out a folded sheet of paper and cleared her throat with dramatic flair. "It's a poem," she announced. "It's called The Chair That Waits." Graham smiled. "Sounds like a mystery or a metaphor," Savannah added. Marley began, her voice clear and sure. "In every house, there is a chair that no one dares to sit. It holds the weight of whispered things, of love that never quit. It waits beside the windowsill for stories left untold, for hands that shake but still reach out, for people growing old. Some say it's just a place to rest, but I think it's much more, a chair that keeps the space between the leaving and the door." When she finished, even Savannah's breath slowed. The words wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. Graham whispered, "Your mom would have cried." "I know," Marley said with pride and sat down like she'd just moved the world. Savannah reached across the table, touched her hand gently. "I didn't just like it," she said. "I think your poem hurt me." Later, Graham stood at the counter, drawer open. He pulled out the black hard drive. "There's something I should tell you both." Savannah tensed. "I plugged it in," he said softly, "not to pry, just to understand what I'm carrying." She said nothing. "I didn't expect what I saw. The corruption, the siphoned data, lives turned into numbers, disposable, replaceable." He looked at her. "You tried to stop it. I wrote 23 letters," she whispered. "That was just the last one. I want to help, not just because it's right, but because if my daughter ever gets caught in this world's machinery, I want to know I fought to make it safer." She took the drive back, quietly. No thank you was needed. "You ever feel like you've stepped into someone else's dream?" she asked. He smiled. "Only when it starts to feel real." That night, long after the dishes were done and the candles burned low, Savannah stood alone on the back porch. In her hands Marley's poem. Above her, stars too scattered to count, but still enough to matter. She read the last stanza again, whispered it into the dark, a chair that keeps the space between the leaving and the door. Her voice broke. In that silence, she heard something distant, a soft click from the fence line, then a flicker of light. Just one, then gone. Morning came in pieces, sunlight bleeding through blinds. Coffee gone cold, footsteps carrying the weight of what remained unsaid. At the kitchen table, Savannah sat with the hard drive in front of her, her fingers hovering above it as if touching it too long would brand her with the past. "I thought I'd feel better," she said. Graham rinsed his mug, turning to face her. "And do you?" "I feel exposed, like when you say a secret out loud, it grows teeth." He sat across from her. "Silence doesn't equal safety. When I worked aerospace, we had a saying, if the engine's failing and you say nothing, it's your fault when the plane goes down." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you calling me the engine?" "I'm saying you're the one who sees the bolts shaking loose, pretending not to doesn't keep anyone flying." She leaned back. "You don't understand." But Graham only looked at her, and in that look was all the understanding she never dared ask for. "It's not just numbers in there," Savannah whispered, her voice raw, eyes fixed on the black hard drive like it was radioactive. "It's names, families, politicians. If I go public, I won't just lose my name, I'll destroy others, too. Some of them, they didn't even know they were part of it." Graham didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were steady, not cruel, but they cut with quiet precision. "Legacy's only worth something if it doesn't make you blind." Savannah sucked in a breath like it had caught her off guard, like it had been pressing against her ribs for days, waiting to be freed. She looked at him, eyes narrowed, searching for the wound beneath his calm. "You sound like someone who's lost something," she said. "I have," he replied simply, "but not everything." That afternoon, Savannah stood barefoot on the back porch, arms folded, watching Marley turn a pile of cardboard boxes into a cosmic playground. Graham had let her build a rocket base out of the recycling pile, and now the yard was a launch pad. The girls' laughter floated through the air like wind chimes in sunlight, clear, unguarded, alive. "Hey, Rocket Commander," Savannah called, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Marley popped her head out from the top of a box, wearing a helmet made from duct tape and dreams. "Commander Marley to base. We have liftoff in T-minus 15 seconds." Savannah stepped onto the grass, arms still crossed. "Permission to board." Marley nodded solemnly. "Only if you believe in moondogs and secret wings." Savannah blinked. "Moondogs? It's a story I'm writing," Marley said, pride swelling in her voice. "About a dog who got left behind, but builds his own rocket. He's sad, but he's brave." Savannah knelt beside the cardboard structure, suddenly breathless. "And does he ever get home?" Marley shrugged thoughtfully. "Maybe, but sometimes being brave means launching anyway." That stopped Savannah cold. She reached up, brushed a wisp of hair behind Marley's ear, her fingertips trembling. "Do you even know how much wisdom you carry?" "I'm 8, Marley replied matter-of-factly. "I carry snacks and secrets. Same thing." Savannah laughed, a sound she hadn't let escape from her chest in years. But as it faded, her smile softened. "Marley," she said, voice quieter now, If someone knew something big, really big, something terrifying but telling it could hurt people, what would you want them to do? Marley frowned, thinking, carefully, I'd want them to be brave, like the moon dog, but only if they do it with love, not anger. Otherwise, it's just noise. Savannah turned her gaze back to the house, back to the hard drive waiting on the kitchen table, back to the past clawing at her heels and the truth refusing to be buried. That night, while Marley slept, under a quilt of starlight and half-read fairy tales, Savannah stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone in her hand. Her finger hovered over a number that had nearly faded from memory. She tapped it. It rang 3 times. Hello. The voice on the other end was hoarse, startled, worn. It's me, she said. I don't have much time, but I need you to. Listen. A beat of silence. You shouldn't be calling, the voice whispered. They're looking. I know, she said, but I'm done hiding. Another pause. Is it true? The data you have, does it go all the way up? Savannah looked over her shoulder at Marley's sleeping form. All the way, she said. It's filthier than I imagined, and it's been polished spotless. The voice sighed. What are you going to do? Savannah stared into the dark. Something. With love, she said, not noise. She hung up. Morning broke like a whisper. Graham found her by the front door, lacing up her boots with quiet determination. You going somewhere? He asked. She looked up, chin raised. To a place that still believes in signal over static. He raised an eyebrow. There's a community radio station just outside downtown, she said. They used to let whistleblowers read poetry when no one else would listen. He leaned on the doorframe, arms folded, not exactly secure. No, she said, but it's human, and they still know truth when they hear it. He handed her a folded scrap of paper. She unfolded it. Coordinates, a time, a rooftop. Signal booster, Graham said. You'll get 10 minutes of clean transmission. That's all I can promise. She tucked the paper into her coat pocket. Why are you helping me? She asked softly. Graham looked at her a long time. Because my daughter thinks you have wings, he said, and I've learned not to doubt her instincts. The front door creaked open. Wait. Marley came bounding down the stairs in her pajamas, holding a crumpled sheet of paper in both hands. The moon dog, she said, out of breath. I made a new one. Savannah turned. This time, the drawing showed the moon dog scars, wings, fierce eyes, but he wasn't flying alone. Savannah knelt, pulled her into a tight hug. Neither am I, she whispered. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut. On the porch rail, unseen, a red light blinked, watching. The station was crammed between a shuttered mechanic's garage and a laundromat that never stopped humming. The sign above the door, 89.4 FM, flickered like it was too tired to argue anymore. Savannah stepped into the station, coat hood up, clutching the hard drive like it was sacred. The booth was dim. Dust and memories hung in the air. The old man, behind the mic, looked up, startled. You're late, he grumbled. You still take walk-ins? She asked. Lowering her hood, his eyes widened, recognizing the ghost in front of him. Raynard, he muttered. Didn't think you'd ever come back through that door. Neither did I. His eyes dropped to the hard drive. You've got something people need to hear. She nodded. 10 minutes. No edits. No delays. He cracked his knuckles, flipped. A switch. The on-air sign glowed red. This station still listens, he said. Can't say the world does. The countdown began. 3 minutes to broadcast. Savannah paced the room, hands trembling. Outside, sirens in the distance. Jazz playing from a stoop. Life going on. Unaware that it was about to be interrupted. Want me to do the intro? The DJ offered. She shook her head. I'll speak my own name. The light turned red. Savannah's voice filled the air, steady, honest, aching. My name is Savannah Raynard, she began. Until last week, I was the CEO of a theory company that promised to help the world think smarter, live freer, feel safer. A breath. We lied. The silence afterward was electric. I hold in my hands a hard drive full of internal Data logs, private memos, and classified messages. Proof that our neurobehavioral technology wasn't just used to personalize playlists or offer shopping suggestions. It was used to monitor, manipulate, and reshape human behavior politically, medically, personally, all without consent. Outside, tires screeched somewhere nearby. When I tried to speak up, I was erased. Quietly, efficiently, those who knew were either bought or buried. She inhaled. But tonight, I choose something different. I choose noise. I choose clarity. I choose to be one more voice that refuses to whisper when shouting might save someone. The DJ stared at her, mouth open. Savannah's voice wavered, but not with fear, with freedom. I know this could cost me everything. But if there's a little girl out there like the one I met yesterday, who believes people can grow wings again, then maybe it's worth it. The red light blinked faster. To anyone listening, she said, voiceful and raw, if you feel powerless, remember this, the system depends on your silence. But the moment you speak, the moment you move, you become the disruption they fear most. And then Dash clicked out the mic cut. Not by her. The DJ stared at the console in horror. They jammed us. He whispered, we're off air. Outside, a black SUV rolled up, its headlights slicing through the night like knives. There's a back exit, the DJ said, shoving the cassette into her hand. Backup copy. Take it. Run. Savannah bolted down the narrow hallway, the tape clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She burst through the rusted door and into the cold, lungs burning. Behind her, radios crackled. She's gone. I repeat, she's not here. 20 minutes later, Savannah reached the rooftop. The city stretched beneath her, glittering and oblivious. Graham was already there. Cables coiled like snakes at his feet. They cut the station. She gasped, holding up the cassette. He didn't flinch. Then we go higher. He flipped 3 switches. You've got 10 minutes, just like I promised. She fed the cassette into the deck, pressed play, and her voice, her truth poured out again. Unfiltered, unstoppable, across buses, breakfast tables, garage radios, and old cassette decks. The city heard her. Think anyone's listening? Graham asked, eyes on the stars. Savannah didn't look away from the sky. They have to be. And then a sound. Boots on metal stairs. Graham, turn. Go. I'm not leaving you, she said. He smiled. You don't need to. Then he walked to the junction box and yanked the cable loose. Sparks exploded. The rooftop lights died. Below, the boots stopped, but her voice still played, rising like smoke across a city that had forgotten how to breathe. Far away, Marley sat in her pajamas, flashlight in hand, drawing. Her father wasn't home yet, but the radio on her nightstand crackled. Then a voice. Familiar. Brave. She smiled. The moon dog made it. She whispered. And for the first time in forever, she wasn't afraid of the dark. The small law office smelled of ink and time. There was no name on the door, just tension and truth. Graham sat beside Savannah. Her bag was zipped, but the hard drive inside thrummed like a second heartbeat. The door opened. A woman walked in like a memory Graham had left unfinished. Carrara, he murmured. Carolyn, she corrected. Civil rights attorney. Once an idealist. Once more than that. Savannah didn't rise. You're the contact. Carrara nodded. Not leaving Graham. He still owes me the coffees and a conversation. This isn't about us. He said, it always becomes about who's willing to risk, and for whom. She turned to Savannah. You have it. Savannah slid the bag across the table, encrypted, triple failsafes, tamper, and it self-destructs. Carrara nodded, but didn't touch it. Smart. But intelligence doesn't win this war. Narrative does. And yours? It's still buried under headlines written by the people you're trying to expose. Truth doesn't need a publicist. Savannah said quietly, no. Carrara agreed. But it needs a plan. Otherwise, it's just background noise. Graham leaned forward. What's the plan? We use the Freedom of Information Protocol. I know the senators who won't blink, but we need you. She said to Savannah, too. Sign an affidavit confirming chain of custody. Savannah's eyes narrowed. You mean, confirm that I'm the whistleblower? Yes. And after that? Carrara didn't blink. Then, we see who still believes in wings. Best case, they drag you before Congress, Cara Lynn said, her voice still wrapped in silk. Worst case, you vanish between headlines, the room still. A hush so deep it felt like breath held along. The air thickened with choices. No one wanted a name. Then Cara's gaze shifted, not toward Savannah, but toward Graham. Her voice softened dangerously so. But I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about you. Graham's brows furrowed. Me? You have a daughter, Cara said, and they'll target whatever makes you hesitate. Savannah leaned forward, her voice urgent. Don't do this. But Cara kept going, gentle now, almost merciful. You think staying out of the storm protects her. It doesn't. It's the quiet ones they erase first because no one notices when they're gone. Graham's jaw tightened. You think I don't know that. I think you're a good man, she said, and good men get used. Or worse, they convince themselves silence is a noble shield for their children. But silence teaches them nothing but fear. Savannah's voice was barely audible. You don't owe me anything, Graham. If you want to walk away, I'll understand. He didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the table, the abstract painting behind it blurring into a smear of shadow and memory. Then he spoke, low and steady. When Marley was 5, she asked me why the moon followed us home. I told her, because light remembers who looks up at it. He lifted his gaze, eyes like flint striking spark. I won't teach her to look down. Savannah exhaled slow, steady like something inside her finally let go. Cara didn't smile, but her posture eased. The tension in her spine melted just slightly. You need protection, she said, encouraged. Graham stood. We've got one. We'll figure out the other. They stepped out in the dusk, the city humming beneath their feet. That restless vibration cities always have before the truth hits. Savannah walked a few paces ahead, her footsteps more assured now, like something heavy had shifted off her shoulders. She used to mean something to you, didn't she? She asked, not turning. Yes, Graham answered without hesitation. Before we both learned how many things love can't fix. She was quiet for a beat. Then, softly, did it hurt? He looked up toward the sky. No moon tonight, but stars, yes. Small glints of courage pricking through the dark. Only when I convinced myself that silence was safer than telling her the truth. She stopped walking, turned to face him. So what's different now? He met her eyes, not with bravado, with clarity. Now, I've got something worth saying. She studied him now with awe, not pity, with recognition. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a paper, folded so many times its edges had softened. A message, she said quietly, from the man who warned me before I ran. Graham unfolded it. The handwriting was crooked, hurried. They'll erase your name before they erase your voice. Speak anyway. He looked back up at her. You ready? Savannah gave a faint, fierce smile. I was never built for quiet. Together, they walked into the night. Their shadows fell long. Behind them, far away, a news site refreshed. Breaking. Former Ethereum CEO, Savannah Raynard, cited with known activist attorney. Below it, a grainy photo. A man Graham standing by a child's drawing tucked in his coat, unmistakable. The house groaned with a different kind of weight that night, not from old wood or settling beams, but from silence folding in on itself, the kind of silence that knows it's being watched. It was past midnight. Marley had fallen asleep hours ago. Curled beneath her quilt, a book sprawled across her chest. Savannah was in the guest room, though a faint glow slipped under her door. Graham stood in the kitchen, staring at the landline. Not his cell, the landline. It had rung once, then again, shorter, then a third time. When he picked up, there was no voice, just soft, deliberate static. Then, if you keep going, a distorted voice warned. Your daughter won't just lose her father. She'll lose her name, her school, her future. She'll become no one, and no one can save no one. Click. No number, no trace, just the fridge humming, and the air turning heavy enough to crush. Graham didn't move. He just sat in the dark, every cell in his body aching. He didn't know how long he stayed there only. That Marley eventually wandered in, eyes half shut, voice small. Daddy. Even the shadows paused to listen. He managed a smile. Couldn't sleep. She shook her head and crawled into his lap like she had when monsters were only under the bed. Was Mommy like Savannah? She asked, her words slow with sleep, smart, kind of quiet, strong. He wrapped his arms around her. No, he said gently. Mommy was louder, but she believed in quiet people. Molly rested her head on his chest. A beat passed. Are we gonna be okay? She whispered. Graham stared out the window. No moon. Just stars. Yes, he said. Finally, we're going to be okay. She looked up. Even if they don't like what you say. He nodded. Especially then, because silence isn't always safe. And some words, they're worth the risk. She blinked slowly, drowsy. I like those words. He brushed her hair back. Then I'll keep saying them, even if it's scary. He looked at the night again, especially if it's scary. By morning, the house was holding its breath. Not peaceful waiting. Coiled, Savannah sat at the table, scrolling through news feeds. Her coffee sat untouched, cold, forgotten. Graham entered with Marley's lunchbox. She's ready for school, he said, trying to smile. Tried to wear the different shoes. Called it distraction fashion. Savannah gave a faint laugh. She's braver than I am. He sat across from her. They called. Her eyes darkened. Them. He nodded. Double quotes the ones who don't leave fingerprints. What did they say? They threatened Marley, her identity, her future. Savannah's hands clenched around the mug. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry for what they do. Silence passed between them, this time not from fear, but from knowing. I didn't tell Marley the details, he said, but she asked if I was scared. Savannah looked up, and I told her the truth, that I was. But I wouldn't let fear decide for me. Her eyes softened. You told her that? Yes. She swallowed hard. No one said that to me. When I was her age, he exhaled. Maybe this isn't just about my kid anymore. Savannah reached into her coat and placed the hard drive on the table. I've generated the final decryption keys, she said. After this, it's out. Everything I know goes public. You sure? I'm tired of whispering into rooms that don't echo. That afternoon, Marley boarded the school bus, waving from the window with sleepy joy. Graham and Savannah stood on the porch. She okay? She asked. She's better than okay. She's watching how we choose. That's how they learn. Savannah nodded toward the fading bus. Will she remember this? Not the details, Graham said, but the silence, or the lack of it. They stood still as the wind brushed past, like a warning or a promise. Let's go finish this, he said. Savannah didn't smile, but her eyes clear. Focus were louder than words. Yes, she said. Let's speak where it matters. By the week's end, the house felt less like a home, more like a mark. First came the drone. Just before dawn, it hovered outside Marley's window. Not a toy, something quieter, sharper. Then came the news segment. Breaking. Former engineer turned radical sheltering fugitive whistleblower. A photo of Graham entering his front door. Savannah behind him. Her scarf couldn't hide her anymore. Savannah stared at the TV. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Graham turned it off. The silence afterward was deafening. Outside, the word traitor had been scratched into his truck. Marley found it first. Daddy, she said, holding her backpack. Does that mean you betrayed someone? Graham knelt, met her eyes. It means someone scared of the truth, and scared people throw words like knives. She nodded slowly, chin lifting. Should I not go to school today? He looked to the bus stop empty. I'll drive you. That night, Savannah sat in the small room where Marley practiced piano. Her fingers hovered above the keys but didn't play. Instead, she stared at a tiny USB recorder Marley had forgotten when she'd used to record herself practicing. Her mom's song. Savannah pressed play. Absent-mindedly. It began with clumsy music, giggles, the innocence of childhood, then something else. You're asking me to destroy this. Her voice echoed from the recorder. Then his voice low, cold, controlled. You built it. You signed it. Now walk away. You're asking me to disappear. I'm asking you to be loyal. Click. Savannah froze. The recorder had captured it the night she nearly folded. She ran into the living room. Graham, she said, breathless, we have something better than the hard drive. The next morning, they uploaded the audio encrypted, verified, and sent it to Elena Salazar, independent journalist, survivor of smear campaigns. 2 hours passed. Then for at 3:20 p.m., the post dropped, captioned simply, when the ones who built the system are told to disappear, ask who's holding the broom. The raw audio played. Within 20 minutes, for 100,000 views. Within an hour, Ethereum stock tumbled 8%. But what made Graham truly cry was Marley, bounding through the door. Daddy, I heard my recording. On the bus. He crouched. Did it scare you? No, she said. They said it was the bravest thing a kid ever did by accident. He laughed through the tears. Sometimes the truth needs a little accident. But by nightfall, the storm surged. Their internet cut. The phone rang every 15 minutes. Unmarked cars lingered outside. Lights off. Engines running. Savannah stared out the window. We're not safe here anymore. Graham looked at Marley, asleep on the couch, one arm around her one-eared stuffed animal. I won't move her again, he said. Not unless we have to. Savannah turned to him. You've done enough. This shouldn't be your fight anymore. But Graham didn't flinch. It became mine the moment her voice saved more than just a song. Savannah blinked. What do we do now? She asked. And in the silence that followed, the answer wasn't just his. It was theirs. Certainly, below was a rich, emotionally immersive, paraphrased version of the story you provided. The original plot, character arcs, and emotional depth have been preserved while enhancing the narrative with refined storytelling, vivid imagery, and deeper introspection. It's written in a natural storytelling tone, as if being told aloud, with attention to every line's weight. Below the noise, Graham stared at the small USB recorder on the table, its presence quiet but resolute. We wait for the noise to rise, he said softly. Savannah looked at him, her head tilting slightly in thought. And then, she asked. Then, he nodded. We speak underneath it where truth still echoes. Outside, dusk had painted the sky a bruised violet. Inside, their home flickered with the kind of resistance that doesn't shout but endures. A few dim lamps, the hum of a heater, the rhythm of breath from rooms to used to holding fear like furniture. It wasn't faith in victory that kept them going, but the stubborn belief that standing firm mattered, not because they were heroes, but because someone had to remain upright long enough for the lies to collapse under their own weight. And then the storm arrived, not with lightning, not with the drama of thunder, but with a brutal silence. Ethereum's official response came like a blade wrapped in velvet, a fabricated audio file, dressed up to discredit everything they'd revealed. We are investigating its origin. The statement read, not a denial, just an erasure of credibility. They didn't argue with the voice. They simply unmade the person speaking it. Graham sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of bitter coffee, eyes locked on the television. Dawn hadn't broken, but the consequences had. Savannah walked in, holding a folded newspaper like it weighed more than paper should. They've offered me a deal, she said. He looked up. They want a public retraction. Say I made it all up during a breakdown. Claim I forged the recording to get revenge on the board after being ousted. In exchange, no jail, no trial, just a clean exit, offshore, quiet. Graham took a slow sip, the heat dull against his lips. And the truth, he asked. Savannah's smile was a wound. It gets buried again, just in a prettier grave. She sank into the chair across from him. Her eyes weren't exhausted, they were resolved. There was a stillness to her, The kind that only comes when someone has already walked through fire and accepted they might not make it back. Maybe it's time, she whispered, for me to disappear. For real. Graham glanced at the refrigerator, at Marley's drawing still taped there, a childish sketch of Savannah with wings. Funny, he said. My daughter didn't draw you with wings because she thought you could fly, but because she believed you were trying. Later that day, Graham found himself in the garage, surrounded by memories packed in dust. He filled a box of old engineering manuals, a shattered telescope, a faded photo of Ellen sitting on the hood of their rusted Subaru, smiling like she knew joy was rare and precious. He lowered himself to the cold concrete and held the picture, like it was the only thing tethering him to something solid. Savannah appeared in the doorway. She watched, quiet. She was beautiful, she said gently. Yeah, Graham replied, and stubborn as hell. Savannah smiled faintly. She once told me, Graham continued, that your legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you protect while you're still breathing. She knelt beside him, her voice low. And what are you still protecting, Graham? He met her eyes. You. 2 days later, Savannah Renard vanished from the public eye. No press conference, no security footage, no goodbyes. The world assumed she'd taken the deal. Most did. Graham let them believe it. But in a quiet town, nestled beside a lake no one remembered, Savannah began again as Sarah Moore. She tutored math at the community center, baked muffins on Saturdays for children who weren't hers, and didn't own a cell phone. She lived small, on purpose. Once a month, Graham and Marley visited. They never stayed overnight, never took the same road twice, but always Marley ran to her like a niece seeing her favorite. And every time they left, Savannah stood behind the screen door, waving gently, as if she'd made peace with no longer belonging to her past. Graham settled into something quieter, too. He took a consulting job with an ethics and tech nonprofit. It wasn't flashy, but it was honest. He wore denim to meetings, drank bad coffee, and once spoke it to high schools about responsibility in the digital age. A student had asked, "Do you ever miss the spotlight?" He paused, then said, "No, the spotlight's too loud. Truth prefers corners." One chilly evening, Graham and Marley sat at the kitchen table, chopping vegetables for soup. She hummed softly the same melody Savannah had once taught her on their dusty piano. "Dad," she asked without looking up, "do you think anyone will ever say Miss Savannah was right?" Graham paused. He set down the knife and dried his hands. "Maybe not," he said, "but truth doesn't ask to be recognized. It just asks not to be forgotten." Marley looked up. "Is that why we still visit her?" He nodded. She protected something while she was still breathing. Marley smiled, soft and sure. "So did you." That night, Graham opened an old drawer and pulled out a small frame. Inside was the handwritten sheet music of Ellen's melody, the one Savannah had copied by hand from Marley. At the bottom, in Savannah's looping script, "Don't let your voice disappear beneath the noise. Sing even when no one listens." He hung it above the piano. No fanfare, just a quiet promise between what was and what might still be. That winter, snow came early. Gentle flakes spiraled outside the windows, blanketing the porch and pines beyond. Inside, the fireplace whispered. Warmth across the old wooden floor. Marley sat cross-legged on the rug, her pencil moving with care across her sketchbook. Her drawing was almost done. A piano with wings. From the couch, Graham watched her, teacupped in his hands. He felt older lately, not worn down, just settled, like a stone that had finally found the bottom of a river. "Hey, Dad," Marley said, still sketching. "Yeah, sweetheart." She looked up, thoughtful. "The things Miss Savannah told you back then, do you think they were all true?" He took a long breath. "I think some of them were," he said slowly. "Maybe not every detail, but the reason behind it all, that felt true." She tilted her head. "So, does that mean what you did was right?" His smile was quiet. "I think so. Not because it was easy or even smart, but because it's what I'd want you to do if ever you had to choose between comfort and conscience. She was silent, then nodded, like she understood something too big for her words. Graham looked at her drawing again. Wings on a piano? He asked. She grinned. It's flying out of a building like in those old spy movies. But instead of blowing up, it just plays a song. That makes people stop lying. He laughed a laugh that felt like home. I hope you never lose that imagination. She flipped to a blank page, hesitated, pencil hovering. Can I ask one more thing? Anything? She glanced up. Do you think Miss Savannah ever missed the world she left behind? Graham thought for a long moment. I think, he said, she missed the idea of it, the version she used to believe in. But I also think she found something better. He stood and walked to the mantel, retrieving the frame. Inside, Ellen's melody, written in Savannah's hand. He gave it to Marley. She found you, he said, and maybe, in a way, we gave her a place where her voice didn't have to fight so hard just to be heard. Marley clutched the frame to her chest. Her eyes scanned the note again. Don't let your voice disappear beneath the noise. Sing even when no one listens. She looked up. Is that what we're doing now? Still singing? Graham didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the upright piano, lifted the lid, and began to play the opening notes of that now familiar song. Marley joined him, her smaller hands following his, note for note. The melody filled the room, not flawless, but full, not demanding applause, not needing an audience. It was enough to be heard between a father and a daughter. Weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address, just a single page, folded twice. The air is colder here, but the silence is kind. I planted tomatoes last week. They're stubborn, but so am I. Thank you for giving me back the kind of life no algorithm could predict. As Marley read it aloud, then tucked it into the same notebook as her drawing. She's still writing. She whispered, smiling. Always, Graham said, some people leave footprints. She leaves ink. That spring, Graham spoke on an ethics panel at a university. No slides, just a story, not a betrayal, not a corporation's, but a choice. He said, the world will always ask you to quiet down, to fit in, to let things go. But the ones who leave something behind, they're usually the ones who stayed still long enough to hear what mattered. A student raised her hand. Do you think one person can really make a difference? Graham looked to the back row, where Marley sat swinging her feet. Yes, he said, because the difference isn't always in what you change, but in what you don't lose. At home, they framed that speech and hung it beside the music sheet above the piano. Two voices, one melody dot, and beneath it all, a silence that no longer trembled with fear but thrummed with presence. One summer evening, as fireflies blinked like soft applause and the sky melted into gold, Marley asked one last question. Dad, are we the good guys? Graham looked at her, the girl who once gave broken songs wings, the child who kept believing even when the grown-ups faltered, and with a voice low, steady, and certain in the only way that matters, he said, we tried to be, and maybe that's the loudest truth we'll ever tell, and that was below the noise. A story not just of systems and secrets, but of quiet courage, of second chances, of voices that refuse to vanish. If this story moved you reminded you of someone you love, made you reflect, or gave you hope, share your voice in the comments. Whether you're from a small village or a bustling city, your voice matters here. We tell stories like this every day, crafted to connect, heal, and inspire. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and never stop listening below the noise.